Thank you.
You know, you remain on the outside of the debate stage, but you do remain on the campaign trail. What does it feel like when you're on the outside looking in? I remember Lindsey Graham was always frustrated by this 4 years ago that he couldn't get onto the main debate stage, despite what he considered to be, and a lot of people thought, his evident qualifications. What's it feel like, and how's it impacting your campaign?
Well, it hasn't really happened yet, so I can't answer that fully because I was on the first two debates, and the third one is coming up, as you know, in a couple of days. So my sense is it's not going to have a huge impact. The first two debates didn't seem to have much of an impact one way or the other. But not being on any more debates would be a problem, so we're working hard to make sure we're back in the fourth or the fifth.
Now, it seems, John Delaney, to me that the person who's in the fourth pole position, Kamala Harris, is closer to you than she is to the three leaders, Biden, Warren, and Bernie. And therefore, I'm not sure what the rule set is. What do you have to do to get back on the stage?
You have to get 2% in four qualified polls. That's for the third and fourth debates, and 130,000 small dollar donors.
And so when again, these are process questions. I hate process questions, but I just want to understand. To impact the polls that qualify, how do you do that? It seems to me to be, getting the donors you've got, I'm pretty sure, but getting the polling to even list you on the poll question in a way that might elicit a hello or to get you on to it just doesn't seem to me to be calculated to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of early state and national polls. And, we get 2% frequently in various polls. We just need to get four of them in four qualifying polls, which we haven't reached yet. And I still haven't reached 130,000 donors either. And any of your listeners can give me $1 at johndelaney.com and help get me there. It's a combination of those two things. And the problem with the 2% is with so many candidates in the race, it's made it hard.
Now, you said to The Hill yesterday that a pragmatic idealist needs to be the nominee. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden are not pragmatic idealists. Are you saying
that? Yeah, I think the three of them are vulnerable for different reasons. But I think Bernie and Senator Warren are vulnerable because their policies fundamentally a majority of the American people don't support. And I think I just think I have better ideas than the vice president. I think there are some real challenges, and we need some new ideas to address them. And I think my ideas are fundamentally better than the vice president's. So I think our three leading candidates are vulnerable right now.
Well, how did General Mattis is his memoir out, and he was asked yesterday why he was so tough on Biden in it, and he is. And he said he didn't know he would be running. But the critiques that General Mattis made are very much similar to the critiques that former Secretary of Defense Gates made about Joe Biden. He's just been wrong about everything forever. Do you think that's going to catch up with him if he remains aloft in the polls? I don't think he's going to, by the way. I still think he's deflating like the Macy's Day Parade balloon that's been gut shot. But it seems to me that people haven't even begun to engage on the issues with him yet.
No. I mean, I think one of the problems the vice president also has is that, a 40-year track record in public service, while admirable, also opens you up to a lot of specific issue criticism, either because you made the wrong decision or times changed or those kind of things.
Let me ask you about Elizabeth Warren and nuclear power and John Delaney and nuclear power. I am a big believer and wrote in the Post 2 weeks ago that we're not serious about either reducing carbon emissions or being well prepared for national security unless we are vigorously in the nuclear power business and in the cutting edge of it. Elizabeth Warren wants none of that. What does John Delaney think?
I agree with you. I think if you are against nuclear power, you are fundamentally not serious about climate change, because it's almost hard to imagine that if we remove the source of 10% of our energy, which is clean and installed at this point, that in any way helps us in terms of dealing with climate change. And I actually think we need to be investing in the next wave of advanced nuclear, which is several decades away, but it'll even be longer if we don't invest in it. And I think nuclear is a very good baseload fuel, which you need to run an energy system, right? You need some source of energy that is reliable and consistent all the time. And then you can use renewables, on the margin to supplement that, but you need some core baseload fuel, and nuclear provides that.
Now, there's also no longer any enrichment facility in the United States owned by Americans that can produce the highly enriched uraniums we need for our stockpiles, for our nuclear reactor ships, things like that. In fact, our entire nuclear industry is flat on its back, John Delaney. What would you do to get it off of its back?
Well, as I said, I would, as part of my long-term energy strategy, I would keep or do things to keep and improve the current nuclear capabilities. I would invest in the next wave of advanced nuclear, and I think things like you're highlighting with the fact that that there's no U.S. industry really in this industry any longer is a huge problem. And I think the main job of the Secretary of Energy is someone who actually understands the nuclear industry.
Now, I would really have liked if CNN had done a town hall not on climate change, but on what to do about Afghanistan. What was your reaction to the president's plan to bring the Taliban and the Afghan government together at Camp David?
Well, when I saw that, I was shocked. I mean, in general, I wasn't in favor of where he was headed with the agreement, and the fact that he was going to then have the negotiation here on American soil, I thought was ridiculous. So I was very cautious on what he was trying to do, or what I just think in general this is moving a little too fast. I mean, the Taliban are terrible actors. They're terrorists, and they're still engaging in that kind of activity. And I just think any agreement has to make sure that the Afghan government is involved, and this didn't feel like that was happening. And then to have it done on U.S. soil, I thought was a big mistake.
Can you distinguish for me, or maybe you also were critical of Jimmy Carter? You're too young to have been critical of him at the time, but Carter brought Arafat to Camp David, and Bill Clinton brought Arafat to Y River. Were you critical of them? And they're both terrorists. Arafat was a terrorist, and the Taliban are terrorists. When do we not bring them?
Well, and I agree with that. And whenever you ultimately cut a deal, like a peace deal, you inevitably have someone sitting across the table who has done things that you consider to be at some level atrocious, right? That is by definition, I think, how this works. But I think it is different with the Taliban at this point, considering they facilitated an attack directly here on U.S. soil. And I think if the president wanted to sit down with the Taliban, he could have done it somewhere else. So I haven't been critical of the president, for example, engaging in the discussions with North Korea. A lot of Democrats are screaming and yelling how he met with North Korea, and I'm like, this is what you have to do to have some diplomacy. So I'm not directionally opposed to the president of the United States meeting with these kind of people. I just thought that this particular group, at this particular situation, doing it in the United States was inappropriate, and he could have done it somewhere else.
Okay, go from 3,000 to 10,000.
In some ways, is the underlying agreement.
Yes, that's what I want. What do you think is an acceptable, if any, agreement with people who have got not just decades-old reputation for dishonesty, but centuries-old record of killing people when they turn their backs?
So I just think you have to ensure that the Afghan government is part of the agreement.
Go ahead, expand on that.
More leverage on them. I think we can do things with Pakistan to have more leverage on the Taliban. I think we have to be supporting the Afghan government. And I just think this can't be, what I saw as a bit of a one-sided deal with the Taliban.
All right, last question. We've got 16 days now to get to a budget deal.
I kind of agree with Lindsey Graham on this in some ways.
Oh, good. We've got 16 days to get to a final deal on spending. You've been through shutdowns. You've been through continuing resolutions. This is not the way to run the military. It hurts the military dramatically when they do short terms. What's going to happen? What should happen?
Well, we should cut a deal, obviously. The fiscal trajectory of this country is in terrible shape. And I think our leaders need to engage in more long-term thinking, because that is the problem. We have to get our deficits down to minus 2%, and we have to do it in a way that doesn't gut our military or gut important domestic programs. And the only way to do that is to get tax policy right and to fix health care.
John Delaney, you remain very reasonable, and therefore you scare me. You can give your website again, though, so that
JohnDelaney.com. Very simple, JohnDelaney.com.
And you need people to give you $1.
$1, that's it.
I can't endorse giving money to Democrats, but I do endorse the fact that you scare me. I'm glad you're not their nominee. Your party's in the grip of a kind of fever. Do you agree with me on that?
I do.
And so what breaks a fever like that other than losing 49 states?
Well, I said it at one of the debates. I said we have two choices here. We could put up someone who's more moderate, like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, Or we could put up someone like McGovern, Mondale, and Dukakis. What outcome do we want?
And you're heading towards the latter. John Delaney, always a pleasure. DonDelaney.com. America, stay tuned. Mike Gallagher is next on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.